Part 1 is framework. Reject attempts to comprehensively define ethical theory. Ethical debates are circular and have gone on for centuries to try to formulate elaborate reasoning, complex theories of Kantian deontology or contractarianism to explain away whole certain situations that harms like slavery and death are morally wrong. Yet these uses of abstracting us away from the intuitions that motivate us to begin the search for morality in the first place. Instead, we should just hold that certain harms like mass abortion and death are intuitively bad. And discounting impacts just because they don't lead to a standard is exclusionary and ignorant. The only reason why LD judges think standards are so important is because they were taught that way. You prefer an inclusive standard because openness to different sources of value in society resists oppression. Hoy 05. Pluralism is a useful antidote to the monistic assertion of the one right theory. Societies are sources of value based, making certain things matter, and prohibiting other things. Logical social practice such as nationalism, no anarchism will be possible, available social powers oppressive which democracy domination become rigid and fixed. And attempting to abstract away from social realities is repugnant and eliminate the possibility of a concrete solution to oppression. Curry 14. Despite the pronounced particular point of real world consequences, discussing these social realities, the consequence of Wendell theory over the point of and up to the exceptional chasm, which actual problems with frame such problems theoretically, escape the real discussion, threatens any real discussion of the concrete nature of oppression, cannot suggest the social problems that are constantly working beyond the effects to observe, or totalizable with an ideological frame. Thus, the standard is resisting oppression. Skip the next part. Part 2 is inherency. Loopholes in federal law allow stalkers and dating partners committing intimate partner violence to retain their guns, causing massive violence against women and queer survivors. EGS 14. It is still legal for valid dating partners and stalkers to possess guns. Even though women in the U.S. are killed by dating partners and by husbands, loopholes continue to allow stalkers and valid dating partners to lawfully possess guns. More than a million American women are assaulted by an intimate partner. The presence of a gun intimate partner violence situation increases the risk of women will die by 500%. Intimate partner violence is also a problem in same-sex relationships. 2038 same-sex intimate partner homicides were committed with guns. Thus, the plan. The United States federal government ought to ban the private ownership of handguns for individuals convicted of misdemeanor-level stalking crimes and intimate partner violence offenders in non-cohabitating dating relationships. McDonough 15. A gun policy platform for individual protection of stalkers and dating violence automatic sports provisions to prohibit anyone committing the stalking from owning a gun. Expand the pretty handgun violence prevention act to protect people in dating relationships by adding the word dating partners to the provision and domestic violence. A small change would ban convicted abusers of dating relationships from owning guns. Part 3 is solvency. Access to handguns uniquely increases the risk of violence and homicide. Planners can reduce it. Maloney 15. When a gun is present, the risk of homicide increases by 500%. More than other weapons combined. More than the tool choice of the majority of nations that partner homicides. Women are 11 times more likely to be murdered with a gun than women in other high-income countries. Of the 1,650 women murdered by men, the most commonly used weapon was a handgun. Black women face disproportionate rates of intimate partner violence within their communities. The traditional discourse about gun violence pushes black women to the margin. Gun control is a necessary intermediate step before larger reforms can occur. Brittany Cooper 15. A new study by BBC provides an alarming statistic. Once every 21 hours, a black woman is victim of a fatal intra-racial violence by male perpetrator. Taking external into account would make that number even higher. The most common weapon was a gun. Existing discourse makes black women invisible. And narrative about black lives focuses primarily on the high number of killings of black male victims by police. Uninterrogated masculinity is a violent enterprise. Period. It does not matter the race or sex of the body opting to reform masculinity. If the state refuses to regulate guns and continues to support a culture where all citizens are vulnerable to victimization, while communities engage in the work, we need comprehensive gun control legislation. Too many black lives are circumcised by the barrel of a handgun. This brutalization of black women is quotidian. The murder of citizens trans women usually not by police. Don't galvanize social movements. Black women are taught to protect and battle social image of black men at all costs. We frequently refuse to tell the truth about the brutality we experience. Handgun bans empirically reduce IPV and do not cause a substitution effect. Massia 15. A handful of states and states have moved to close the gap. Research with the gun-friendly laws have been successful. States and states with related laws at 25% fewer domestic gun hobbs. States without them would be close to not replace guns with other weapons. The impact firearms have the level of use is staggering. The plan is empirically effective. It reduces homicides and background checks are successful. NCADV 15. The laws have been proven to make a difference in states where background checks are required. 38% fewer women have been shot to death by an intimate partner. According to the FBI, laws prohibiting possession lead to explain to those convicted of stalking and dating abuse. Dating partners are now responsible for the majority of intimate partner homicides. Facts about the role of guns in escalating and intimate partner violence are indisputable. Handguns are uniquely problematic for intimate partner violence. Long guns are not concealable and give survivors more time to escape. Dixon 93. Handguns are much more convenient. Concealability would be important in the home. Surprise factor is peculiar to handguns. Supply people can hardly be aware the person is carrying a shotgun. With the ease of pulling out the gun makes the triggers more likely to spill over into murder. By the time the assaulter has gone to another room to retrieve the long gun and load it, the survivor has crucial seconds to escape. Guns atomize people by creating a politics of fear and individualism which makes everyone oppression inevitable. Deverbander 15. The fragmentation of society into atomistic individuals renders us right for oppression. More resistance can be offered in a country where citizens are not united. There's no individual and more extreme than gun rights. Gun rights is a means for repulsing government or other citizens, not for creating common civic culture. Sovereign individuals seem to the arm to the teeth are no match for the brute power of tyrants. Gun rights movement undermines a collective that low might counter government oppression. Indeed, government and gun individualism mask more powerful forms of oppression. Guns create the illusion of control and thereby cede power to the government. Deverbander 15. The surveillance state grows when we are arguing not gun just assists the surveillance state by urging adherents to beware government and inform which impression is less likely to emerge. Guns invite us to feel fear while blinding us to the ways in which we are dominated. They can achieve oppression in ways that cannot be opposed by mere guns. And IPV prevents any larger social movements. Control over a person's identity fractures, potential for collective resistance. O'Doherty 15. IPV produces loss agency and ability to control the world. Social participation may be restricted, leading to lost opportunities to derive the benefits of group connections. IPV may lead to loss identification with collective or identification with abused women. Part 4 is the underview. First, Afghans RBI say points afflex, naked ability to collapse to either left, so acting to the clap point, either actually more super time country, also acting to identify theory all B points, reciprocity, only naked receivers only after burdens, so Afghan reciprocally respond to the RB that compensates for next new cavity of the belt. Point 1 year is too short to read the argument of the next athletes. Each later be reciprocal rather than a more reciprocal avenue. Second, we need to embrace the state's heuristic argument. It's not that the state is good, but learning levels of power confronting it. Zanotti 14. Resistance to government is not limited to rejection. This struggle between government questions oversimplifications of complex political rationalities. Government is heuristic, invites careful differentiations rather than overarching demonizations of power. Ethics of engagement not a way to evolution, attempting to twist power by playing with it for cards of bill, not apathy, but the best way to say activism. Third, within education, this is uniquely key. The judge has an obligation to endorse political education to prevent ceding power. Giroux 6. Depoliticization of life suggests a crisis of democracy. People develop indifference to civic engagement. Educators need to be challenged to the assumption that politics is dead or politics will be determined exclusively by government leadership. Data pressing social problems offers individuals hope and the conditions that bear on their lives to revitalize activism and citizen access to decision-making. Educators need to be at the forefront of the defense of the most progressive gains of the state. 4 tangible solutions are key. Abstracting the details necessary for a workable alternative reproduces violence. Grind 12. What giving existing conditions are we to do? At least activities are making real differences. The group them all together as the worst sort of abstraction is good at carrying. The left is good at carrying out critiques of the net social formation. Therefore, proposing realistic alternatives. Phase 1, ultra radical critique. Phase 2 is question mark. Phase 3 is revolution and complete social transformation. 5, I believe. Yeah. Use reasonability on theory and theory for the app for the bright line of the existence of foreground and a credit solvency. Advocate 8-point defense on justify wins even when the law of defense do so. Lose without office factory counterinterpret. Does worse harm the fairness institution lose the right for being largely abusive. Only if your abuse was enough for your opponents to lose. B-point increase substance debate. The bears are less than 7 to refill those theories and they can be dealt with quickly by reasonability. The bears C-point mentor comes from the topic literature. Do not punish me for their lack of research. That's my friend.
Okay. Ready for Crossex?
Yep.
Do I have to read a competing advocacy or could I straight turn the app?
Well, what would it mean to straight turn the app without an advocacy?
Well, you provide evidence saying that we have to have tangible solutions and we have to work within the power structures that exist. Does that mean that I should lose a priori if I do not read a counterplan or a K? Or an alternative
Like the SQUO is a counter advocacy. You can't just be like plan bad if you defend it's better than this. If you defend the plan's worse than this, yeah, obviously.
Okay, is there any reason for triad framing in the app?
Not directly in the AC.
Not directly.
There are arguments that could obviously implicate it in that way. I don't make those implications in the app because I'm not responding to anything that you haven't read yet.
Okay. That's fine. Let's go to your Messiah 15 evidence that says no substitution effects. This is talking about a couple cities and a couple, it talks about a couple of states and a couple of cities that have moved to close this gap. Where's the sample size and which cities, what states, and like how many people are doing this and what is the band scale?
So, right now, the law does not exist on the federal level. Similar laws have been implemented before on state levels, which proves that mechanisms for enforcement currently exist. Those states, I can list off various examples. Louisiana, Arkansas,
okay, I want to know this
North Carolina,
yeah, that's
Missouri.
Great. Anyone can tell me what states
have
already implied that. I'm not asking for which states have already applied that law. I'm asking for which states. What is the mechanism? What are they using? What is their method for determining that there's not a substitution effect?
I can pull up the methodology of the study. Okay.
I think it's relevant to whether or not your evidence is of quality.
Sure. We can keep going. I'll pull that.
While you're doing that, can you also pull up the author clause? Because you don't have any on the card, and I'd like to know who this person is.
Sure.
All right. Should I wait for you to do that, or should I continue? Can I ask questions while you pull that up?
Jennifer Massia is an editorial assistant for the New York Times. She works for various gun report projects at the Gun Report, which is a website that does different types of studies.
Okay, and
she went
methodology.
To Columbia Graduate School. I'm pulling that up. Just one thing at a time. Do you want to ask other things?
Yeah, I didn't want to distract you though if you were...
no, I mean I can...
Okay, so your NCADV evidence and like a lot of the solvency is talking about how it was a state level. Why would a state level ban be applicable to a federal level ban?
The argument is policies like the AF have been implemented, which empirically denies things like, I don't know, the AF has certain types of effects that people often identify with AF policies, given that it's been done before and not had those effects. It also proves that when we have banned people with intimate partner violence and for like dating violence and stalking crimes, it empirically, like we have the mechanisms that exist, for example, identifying who is convicted of those types of crimes.
Who do you define as the United States federal government? Is that just like Obama, or is that...
The federal government contains 3 branches.
So you defend all 3 passing?
I mean, Obama's probably not part of it. It would be Congress, but it necessarily has to include like some level of Supreme Court, like making it legit. So rollback arguments don't apply. What?
Did you find methodology?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you just email that to me? Because I just want to start my MC.
Yeah. As in no prep.
Yeah, no prep.
Okay, cool. And let me put this in email. I'll reply, or like do the original email. Find it.
Save, what is this? Emory round 6, NC.
I just put it directly in the texted email.
Alright, that's fine.
Okay.
What's it? Camera comment.
the order?
It'll be 2 off cased.
Cool.
Emory, 6 NC. Right, set.
Just give me a sec to pull it up. Cool.
Ready?
Actually, sorry, give me like 10 seconds. I'm gonna make the 1 AR doc and just save it now because I've had problems where it just crashes.
Yeah, go for it.
It's the worst thing ever.
I feel.
Okay, I'm good.
I'm good as well.
Alright. Let me make it. Ready? AZ and TERP ban includes every citizen in the United States. Ban means to remove guns from all firearm owners. Mike Bietz, 1896. To ban all private ownership, ban all sales of firearms, and by requiring that all firearms owners turn in all their weapons. And handgun bans apply to everyone. Justice Scalia 08. DC law bans handgun by making it a crime to carry handguns, and no person may carry an unlicensed handgun. B is the violation. General violation. AC ban does not apply to all people. The ban only applies to a particular group of domestic abusers. And second, IPV violation. A, it's not a gun bill. And B, it limits bans to those convicted of stalking. Woodruff 15. The zero tolerance for domestic abuse act. I don't look at this as a gun bill. I look at this as a domestic violence bill. It would prohibit gun ownership by anyone convicted of stalking. And C are standards. 1 is predictability. Predictable limits and predictable limit. Your inter would ruin relevant negatively topic lists. You can defend any tiny class of demographics or regions where no authors disagree guns should be used, like in classrooms or with mass murders. My interpret's the best match for predictability and limits, since you can still read those specific advantages and I get other DA links. It also results in better impact analysis since we have to weigh different trade-offs. That also means that the topical version would have been able to solve. You could have just read it without the plain text. You will also under limit because you allow any group to be banned, which creates an infinite number of possibilities. Ban men, serial killers, dogs, rapists. Any potential group can affirm which text negative ability to predict the F. I need to reasonably predict the F to get access to good quality cases and blogs. Limits key because we need appropriate boundaries on the topic. Skip the predictability outweighs stuff. 3, next is ground. Hyper-specific land skill, nay ground. Hyper-specific allows have to delink solvency, instant and disset. It also prevents the make from running counterplans because it requires picking out of or counterplaining a hyper-specific graph. There's virtually no literature solvency advocates for hyper-specific counterplanes. And ground is sufficient for both education and fairness. All other standards are internal links to ground. Predictability, reciprocity, topical and times your ground source of education and guarantees that both sides maximize your time. Restricted access about it. And if the AC tries to delink the solvency terms on case, then it just proves the abuse on theory. Here are the voters. First one is ground. If the AC delinks the solvency terms or tries to delink an NC offense or mitigate NC offense based on the hyperspec parts of plans, then you can vote on actual in-round abuse. 2 is truth testing. You should presume the falseness of an AC of any AC truth claim because we did not have the opportunity to research and test it. Damon Gedman 13. Deputies engage in confirmation bias in order to make us the case. Select certain data while deliberately neglecting to de-emphasizing other data, but confirmation bias is disaster policy one leads to jump to conclusions, fall prey to misguided analogies, just simply exude information. The only remedy range impulses and challenges assumptions is board and who have devil's advocate who checks. And 3 is fairness. Fairness is the key to decide better debater, which can't be done for one its own fair fashion applies. Drop the debater because the round start needs to check ours full flow response to non portion to your violation in theory. Then issue competing in terms because one is most subjective. Reasonability is arbitrary means judgment is will intervene on what's subjectively reasonable rather than looking at it as simple offense defense paradigm. Interpretations will always compete the same way, but every act can be reasonable and not reasonable. 2 race to the top. Offense defense means the best. Interp wins nothing and one that favors a neg. The affs can argue that a neg over limits. And 3 they are not reasonable. The standards debate proves that a near balance tends to signal to limit the topic. Skip 4. Those also definitely clash directly with his on the aff. I made sure that they linked directly. Next off is TPP. TPP will pass only if Obama can work out ideas of a Sudi 120. Tom Dorsey will prove that TPP could happen quickly in the second quarter of 2016 if the White House can work out deals with leaders on areas like biologics, the background financial data to predict Shot Senior fellow Peterson Institute, the wild card is getting implemented in the legislation drafted, and the key to that is to resolve these political problems. In 2011, Obama submitted deals with South Korea, Panama, and Colombia. It took just 8 days to complete for TPP administration has to work out fixes with the leaders quickly. And plans to after Obama's PC, James 13. Obama loses full cap on gun control. The president campaign for overall gun control legislation, especially the bipartisan background check compromise with urgency. Those who argue against gun control are better organized, better financed, better and longer. Make sure to stay focused on the during election times. The amendment fell short. If Obama couldn't get an important win in a Democratic controlled Senate on a measure that had overwhelming public support, what's in store for other issues? He seeks political capital and it hurts. And TPP key to global economy and trade rejection, trade fighting, protectionism, and World War. Boskin 1030. Extreme protectionism set the stage for the Second World War. Ultimately turned recession into global depression. Virtually all Obama's degree fear trade and hits global growth and growth is failing to meet expectations. TPP seems
like a good move to reduce non-tariff burdens and harmonize policies and include GSMS. The deal will add hundreds of billions. The alternative is not the status quo. It is a consistent move away from openness. It's much easier to build trade relations than to resolve the Islamic State is not trying to keep strong trade relations to cooperation, at least discourage escalation of conflict, allowing protection to trade barriers. Remade would deal a damaging blow to cooperation. And moral uncertainty means prevent extinction. Bostrom. Moral uncertainty suggests our present understanding might well be confused if we are uncertain that there is great value in preserving our ability to recognize value and see the future accordingly. True that would be a future value. Humanity is the best way to increase future value. Case. First on our CF15 evidence, this is just a New York Times editorial, person talking and summarizing an article. You should definitely prefer my substitution turn because I have a qualified author who actually knows about, who's an actual criminologist. That's Kleck, which I'll get to in a moment. Also, on your NCADV evidence, it says that the state effects were key, but it doesn't give an internal link as to why the state implementations would be able to apply to the federal, would be able to apply at the federal level. These will apply here. Case turns. This is just a big dump. Federal statutes lead to plea bargains that allow offenders to keep their guns, circumventing solvency. Vanek 08. Federal laws impair states from reducing gun violence and from use of the dilution occurs because the federal gun bans weaken the ability of the state to prosecute as a defendant faces the possibility of federal sanctions to be done. Have a compelling reason to refuse to guilty plea trials or costly. He said many victims recant or refuse to cooperate. Many prosecutors will hesitate to say that. So scarce resources on the trial. The prosecutor might choose to charge you disorderly conduct. Cut it. Disorderly conduct. Next is the substitution effect, Kleck 09. Bans on less lethal varieties encourage substitution more lethal against the substitute for a small cheap and get it somewhat large, more expensive, most offenders who committed crimes with the against it. They would substitute along if they could not get the substitution like the root and increase the fraction of gun assaults resulting in death. Both of these turn the essence and it decreases your ability to solve for the problem as well as leads to bigger guns, which will lead to more domestic violence in worse scenarios. And next is the illegal markets turn, Copal 93. Homemade guns, self-defense for robberies, most homicides are perpetrated in close range populated for bootleggers, resulting in handguns becoming cheaper. Handguns were cheaper, they become more available. Criminals end up more widely on than ever. Next is the backlash turn. People rush to buy more guns following restrictions proven under Obama's administration. Devaney 15. Gun protection has more than doubled over the course of the Obama administration. The numbers paint a picture of gun owners who were considered by new restrictions. Barack Obama deserves the gun salesman of the decade of war. People have been rushing to buy firearms because they're afraid that Obama will take away their Second Amendment rights. Under President Obama, gun protection is by 140% to 110.8 million in 2013. Pistols are the most popular, accounting for 4.4 million of firearms made in 2013. The numbers of pistols have nearly tripled during the Obama administration, which could also reflect more people turning to firearms for personal protection. Also, turn Planet Anti-Guns prevents ending rape culture through a key intersection for feminism. Charles 11. Some issues affect a particular class of women. Maternity leave affect only mothers. Abortion of the woman of a child is a fear. Violence affect all women. The bodies unless it's worth defending these women must have self-defense with fire. Her basis is accepted as a woman's armed self-defense help change the current rape culture to encourage their own safety while working for an end to patriarchy. Guns are the most effective tool for self-defense. Lastly, gun ownership deters felons from illegal stuff. Kate Monster 06. National Institute of Justifies a larger percentage report that fear that a victim might be armed to deterrent field. Felons most frightened about confronting an victim were those from states with the greatest relative number of privately owned firearms. Conversely, robbery is the highest in states that most restrict gun ownership. And overall, these definitely turn the aff. They show reasons as to why domestic violence would increase. Also, at the top of the aff, you said that using the standard to exclude any offense is a reason to reject someone, and so you should be rejected if you try to delink these or say that they don't apply to your standard. I didn't read CPRC down.
So the last argument is because I say we should be open to different sources of value, it means saying that your turns don't apply to my aff means I should lose. How does that make any sense?
You shouldn't just delink my turns.
Obviously, I'm not going to say your turns don't link, but if I say that my offense is more specific, why does that mean I'm not listening to you?
Sorry, I did not mean to phrase that as like a automatically drop you if you answer my turns.
So why does the fact that you did not do research against my affirmative mean you should not be responsible for reading evidence that's good and specific?
I'm sorry, where are you pulling this from?
The T arguments about why if you read bad evidence and it doesn't apply to my aff, that somehow proves the abuse. Why doesn't it just prove that you were lazy and didn't do research? Given that other people have read specific turns against our aff and we have a case.
I don't think I make that claim, but...
Yeah, you do. In the fairness voter, on the T-shell, you say, if I try to make no-link arguments or more specific arguments, it proves the abuse.
If you try to no-link my solvency turns because you...
So the fact that you read turns against the wrong aff means that my aff was abusive.
Okay, first, I didn't read wrong turns, so they definitely apply.
All right.
But second, I'm saying
so let's go to the intern. So both of your cards are miscut.
Offense.
So your McCavity card says in the line down text that to ban all private ownership, one way of banning all private ownership is to ban on guns. It doesn't define a ban as doing so.
I'm sorry,
how is this a definition?
I don't see that.
To ban all private ownership by banning all sales of firearms is meaning that the one way that you just took one paragraph out of a long article is saying that the one way that they banned all private ownership was by banning the sales of all firearms. It doesn't define it that way.
I mean, it definitely does. It says to ban all private ownership. Ban
Right. It says that because you lined down a bunch of stuff that proves that it's an example. It's not a definition. Okay, then your Scalia. So your Scalia card says that in DC there was a law that banned handguns. That says that law banned it for everyone. Why is that a definition of ban?
Why that law? Because Scalia was doing a ruling on one specific instance. Had a case come up where it was
right. So Scalia's verdict on the case said DC's law banned everyone, so it was bad. That implies they had a law that banned people, and it was everyone.
They had a law that banned everyone.
Right. Why does that mean the word ban means everyone, as opposed to that particular use of the word ban?
That's how Scalia interpreted it. I can't explain to you the details of why Scalia interpreted the word ban.
All right. Your violation argument.
The
violation argument that it's not a gun bill, is this some type of independent T argument, or if I concede that I violate, is this relevant?
If you concede that you're not topical, then that means...
No, if I concede I violate your interp, but I read a different interp, is your argument about the AF is not a gun bill relevant? You don't have an implication of why
it shows that you're not topical.
Wait, so your violation...
If you're defending a domestic violence act and not a gun bill or gun control or gun...
Why does the resolution say you have to be a gun bill as opposed to just banning the private ownership of guns?
I'm not... I think you're trying to think that I'm like way more tricky than I am. This is a straight up T-shell.
Right.
I think you should have to ban for everyone, not just domestic
TPP. Obama passed an executive order that banned guns. If that didn't piss off GOP enough that they're still looking for TPP, why would the AF?
Yeah, James says that it didn't work.
What?
James gives an example where it didn't work.
James was from 2013. It's definitely not about Obama's 2016 executive order.
Read the evidence. We'll see, and we'll have that debate.
Okay.
See if recency matters. There are other standards on a politics debate. Cool.
What does the Vanic card say on case?
It says that by allowing for a federal ban as opposed to a state ban, it means that people are less likely to actually be prosecuted for the effects.
Why? You don't advocate a state ban since you defend the squo. Why does this matter?
Because it's a turn to your case. It means you're not able to solve for the problems, right? So you just allowed for them to get away.
Okay.
See, they get a plea deal. So if they admit to being guilty, then they get away with like a really easy crime or punishment.
I'm sorry, that's what I'm doing alternative. Doesn't matter as long as we're the same.
I'll put you at 143, and I'll put me at 5 then.
Yeah, that's fair.
I did 5.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, I've been doing 4 the whole tournament.
I've been doing 5. It doesn't really
Do you
matter.
have a preference?
I don't care. I thought it was 4, just to make the.
You want to just do 4 then?
Well, I like took my time thinking it was 5.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have taken less time. It doesn't matter as long as we do the same time.
You're like, I'd rather 5, but it doesn't matter. Nah, I'd rather see more clash. Even though I didn't use my prep for my clashing.
Alright, order is T, AC,
Can you flash me anything new?
I'll read
Or
one.
email or whatever.
Cool. Wait, let me keep digging. Wait, you can see RBIs, right?
I didn't respond to him directly.
139.
So, what's the order again? Order.
T, AC, TPP.
Order is it? You going to interp or counter interp first?
Ready?
Another piece of paper.
Counter interp. Sorry, you said counter interp first?
Correct.
Cool. Ready when you are.
Cool.
Counter interp the affidavit ban handguns for specific for stalking crimes and IPV dating violence offenders with federal qualified solvency applicant in the U.S. Attorney's Office. 13. The law number amendment the Federal Gun Control Act by banning the possession of firearms for individuals convicted of misdemeanors, domestic violence, the intended effect is to the firearms ban to anyone convicted of domestic violence. All American dictionary defines ban as officially or legally prohibited who is banned from driving for a year. That definitely implies it could be one person. Serious versus clash bans for different groups of people drastically different between colleges, abuse, same crimes, violent misdemeanors. Respect is key. Differing impacts. 8. Enforcing negative burden rejoining to the response to specifics of the plans and sales spreading through non-related disasters with things to scaled education. B. Point to being specifics is key to coming up with real solutions. Are also 2. Thinking general solve anything. No realistically advocates a national ban except Dixon to end 25 years ago, which means that banning specifics of particular plans is key to having modern evidence because no one actually advocates a ban in Congress for all guns. C. Point, it makes the AFA sitting Dr. 5 to defend every type of gun because the neg can read the same arguments every round and they know exactly what the AFA advocate for. So key to by ensuring AF flexibility because the neg already has a burden of rejoining. They already can prep particular AFs, for example, because the AFA just goes on the wiki. So having multiple different strategic options is key. Advocacy also the ultimate purpose of being outweighs fairness and key to long-term skills depending on what we believe in. Fairness is less important than knowledge we apply outside of it. Unique self also overwhelms only cover times disparities, marching inequities, means around different federal government. They would say on the violation, they say the AFA is a domestic violence bill, not a gun bill. First is the AFA is not being a gun control bill. Does not mean it's not branding private ownership of handguns. This is not a key argument. Second, this is one person saying the AFA is considered the domestic violence law. No, that's not gun control. All of our AFA evidence indicates it falls within the realm of gun control, off limits, and their predictability argument. First, if I defend the whole resolution, I have to prep out every single disad, and they can read picks to any group of people. It's worse than having to prep every single plan since 8. The neg is reactive, they can tell their arguments. I've heard of it, they assume when they read disad, so I can adapt to the one area. B. Time schemes, neg acts like they have with framework generic case. C. Plans require solvency afterwards. That's something they're comparatively worse. Second, my AFA is a major policy proposal in Congress. This is super widely discussed and they have tons of responses. Third is always on probabilities. Here to my interview, one of engagement. Their terms condition on the probability. One of could prep against plans. They say I can talk about my AF without reading a plan text because I just say read as an advantage, but that would not solve any of the offense because it would still allow them to read picks out of any particular group of people, or for example, read generic disads and just weigh them against the affirmative and never have a burden of rejoinder to respond to the AF. They say ground because it's not in the literature and they don't have a solvency advocate. I do, which solves their offense. There are also tons of CPs. They can read different background check states where ban bullets. You should not punish me for their lack of research. research. The fact that he read terms that does not mean that there is not research or things that he could do against my interpretation, which means he still has ground under it. All my offense also proves that he has more ground on my interpretation, or it's comparatively better. Now, specifically his interpretation, the Scalia evidence is not an the cavity evidence is one use of ban means all people. It doesn't say that it is defined as meaning all people, which means it's terrible. The Scalia evidence also says that in DC, one particular ban applied to everyone. It does not mean bans apply to everyone. This is a higher level framing issue. He does not have a definition, which is game over, because he means he automatically loses the T debate. He has conceded RVIs, which means you automatically vote app if I win the theory debate. This is not something you should even be evaluating, but I'm going to go to the substance anyway, because I think I've already won on theory. Contention. He has conceded the empirical solvency of the case, that the app necessarily reduces IPV because it has been done before, and empirically solves. He says that I have no internal link as to why that applies on the federal level, but this is just defense. It does not prove that federal level would not work. He says the plan leads to plea bargains and let offenders off the hook, but this does not say this. It would require meeting a state solvency advocate or someone that says the states are doing it. Insofar as most states are not passing the act, there's no reason the federal government trading off is relevant. Also says that states will the states will stop prosecuting, but it's not matter. There's no dissent to that or trading off because the federal government just prosecuted instead. He says substitution effect, which is not relevant because he has conceded Dixon that in the home there is a concealability and time frame issue that makes long guns not as effective because it gives people more time to run away and to escape. He says illegal markets, which is uniquely not true of IPV because it's not something that people because IPV is not like robberies. It's called viewers who are angry in the moment. Only criminals spending large crimes turn to legal markets, and Zosef convicted. It's also greater than school. The absence of force with laws in place and make it hard to really get a gun, even if there's a market for guns. Today, he says people will buy more guns if there is restrictions. It's not unique. The plan is small and is also popular, which means it is not relevant. He's the 5 and 6 argument also are not relevant since the app only bans guns for abusers, not for people who need them for self-defense. Politics. First plan is a popular game over. Jensen 15, 82% of American support. There's a broad bipartisan consensus. Republicans do by 68-23, by 8%. Gun owners think it's a good idea in the era. Divisive politics. People think people convict stalker domestic abuse against a dating partner. Brings every segment together. Be dividing popular. This is also multiple fights stump the bill. Phoebe and 120 other top priorities. CJ asked for Republicans to add to the accomplishments. Issues. That's fine. Cut it at issues.
Issues?
Yeah. So it's just plain popular and then that card.
Sorry, what was
the Fabian card, the second card, so you can take out the first card, the third card, and everything below plain popular.
Yep. Thanks. I appreciate it. Cool. Alright, I got 5 minutes.
Correct.
Starting now. That should cover me pulling up files to put into a doc. Or maybe not. Alright, hold up. I wrote them down. Fairness.
Yeah, your time's up.
Do you not want these flashed to you?
Oh, yeah, if you're flashing it, then that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I didn't know what you were doing.
Oh, sorry. Normally I tell people. I apologize. Yeah, that's awkward. I'm grabbing analytic responses to answer T specifically is what this is for. That's not what I want. I want the
I mean, if you don't even have them up and you're like searching for your files, that's not really like flashing.
I mean, do you want me to stop? I can.
Yeah, I prefer you not read the blocks if they're not even up.
Analytic then. Like I have them memorized. It is literally for your sake. Like.
You can do it after if it's reading. It's fine.
No, it's all good, man. If I'm doing them off my head, then freaking, you gotta flow, man. Nah, you'll be fine.
Is there anything else that's emailed?
Oh yeah, they're all analytics. I'm just gonna paste it into the email.
Thank you.
By the way, I didn't get the 1 AR doc.
Oh, weird. Oh, whoops, I only sent it to John. Let me forward it. I just did reply instead of reply.
I figured that's it.
Just sent. I'm just going to copy this into your doc.
Go for it.
Great.
Ready? So order will be, sorry, I'm not even thinking about what I'm doing. I'm gonna put those down. Where's T? We'll go his overview, then his interp, my interp.
Okay. Overview is in like a bunch of stuff I should flow, or it's just like a short.
You should probably flow it.
Okay.
It's like what comes first.
Yeah, sounds good.
Alright. Okay. Judge ready? Opponent ready?
Mm-hmm.
Not an issue of semantics, it's an issue of pragmatics. We have to determine what the best rule is for debate. You've conceded the norms creation and truth testing at the bottom of the AT shell. That also means when you just say extend my RVS and you've conceded truth testing as a rule about that means you don't win off of T. So that means the risk of offense is sufficient to negate. Now I'm going to win. That fairness comes first. You don't have any fairness offense except for some flippy analytics that were barely even articulated in the 1AR. 1AR. Let's go to your. So first, fairness first. Fairness is an internal link to do and necessary for any sort of education or advocacy skills. 1, debaters go without fairness. Debaters cannot participate in the activity. Be forced out, meaning we lose A, valuable perspectives, and B, talented debaters, meaning generally less quality debates. It's also it's empirically proven for our advocacy skills. We can't have the best advocacy if we don't have the greatest brains. Roland. Well, the goal of debaters is to teach argumentation skills. The goal of debaters is simply to win debates. Debaters come to believe that debate is fundamentally unfair. It's easy to predict that many students like with the activity to discuss consequently competitive equity. It's essential to guarantee the competitive goals of individual debaters. Lead them to work hard and achieve the communal goals of the activity. And 2, fairness outweighs to avoid theories. My opponent warfare, we can avoid theoretical discussion altogether, meaning more topical education and focus on the advocacy skills, which is A, only available for 2 months, and B, more applicable to our lives outside of debate. Now, on to the standards. He reads Clash. There's no link from Clash into fairness, so he's missing the internal link. Second, he tries to link it into advocacy skills, but he says, subpoint A, he says burden of rejoinder, but 1, if you get an RVA on T, then this takes us out because there's no burden of rejoinder. There's not a burden to be topical. Second, non-unique, you should, the burden of rejoinder stands no matter what your aff is, as long, even if it is topical, you should still have to defend it. On your subpoint B, you say specifics are key. 1, specific, these are just specific to advocacy skills. If I win fairness first, that means that this question is irrelevant. Second is even if specifics are necessary and important, I still outweigh. I'll get to that on my intro, but I definitely provide more specifics because I allow for you to defend different types of handguns that are banned or banned in certain areas like a tribal land or a specific city or state. Just because you can't defend certain people, you can still defend the geographic areas and types of guns. Now, on to his advocacy skills claims. He says advocacy skills outweighs, but one debate is made up of technical components and rules that are forms for general discussion. Means advocacy skills are about to distract from the conducting of a conversation. 2, promotes false righteousness, which we think we're advancing issues that we're really not. We're less incentivized to do anything about them in the future if we're convinced we already contributed. And 3, impossible since we debate both sides of the resolution. So we're not genuinely endorsing our advocacy. We have to argue against it later. Means you make us bad advocacies half the time we're arguing against the truth. And 4, self-defeating, since you sidestep all my bad arguments just by saying they make us bad advocates. It would be more meaningful if you combated them entirely substantively, since we learned the reason why they're flawed. Now, onto uniqueness overwhelms the fairness. It's empirically not true. There's always some amount of objectivity and fairness. Second, and as well as even if people were there's some amount of skew or people made bad decisions, that means that they were wrong to do so. And the judge only has jurisdiction over this round, and it has to focus on in-round instructional abuse, which definitely outweighs any sort of out-round abuse you can claim. And even if we can't do anything about that, the judge at least can do something about the competitive equity in this round. Now on to my interp. Extend the interp that a ban includes every citizen in the United States. You do indict into my Machiavellian scholarly evidence. Even if these evidences are bad, you consider the norm to creation and truth testing at the bottom of the bottom of the voter, which means that it doesn't matter if I have authors to support it. It's about whether or not this is a good norm or good topical definition. We should prefer pragmatics over semantics, because even if debating the right rule is right, it doesn't matter if I have no ground or I'm not able to engage in the discussion. For example, we could have a topic that says we should prevent cancer, but that doesn't mean that it is a good topic to debate, because everyone would agree we should prevent cancer. Same thing here applies here. Now, onto the violation. You say that the half is gun control, but you've conceded the Woodruff 15 evidence, which says that it is not. It only limits bans to those convicted of stalking. Also, this is a domestic abusers act, if anything. Second, you definitely violate because you're not banning for every citizen. That is the plain text of the AV. Now, onto the standards. First, on extent predictability to grad, you are unpredictable and under limit the app because you allow any group to be banned, as well as I'm not able to engage in any ground because you're hyper specific. Now, you say one that the whole res means that you have to defend all these, but it's preferable to what you justify, because otherwise I would have to specify every single person in this room being banned from handguns, and every single person in death row being banned from handguns, which is completely ridiculous, or rapists or dogs getting guns, which is impossible to prep out and impossible and ridiculous to expect. Second, and it's not an issue of what you did, but it's what you justify. That is conceded. Second is, even you said that I would allow for picks, but picks are illegit and bad ground. I shouldn't have to be forced to. I shouldn't have to use those anyways, and you should just read theory on them. Someone says, Brad, just like I'm doing to you now. Your second subpoint says that it's a major policy proposal, but so is CJS reform. Doesn't mean that it's a topical app. Second, it's not relative to the places there are other specificity that we're able to solve. Cross-apply the analysis on your standard, where you're able to specify other sorts of specifics like handgun, the type of handgun, or even the color of handguns, where they're banned, not the people who ban them. You say fourth, you say that there are different counter plans, but that's negated, nullified, because they would probably be unfair and decrease my amount of ground otherwise. Second, it's non-unique at best because you I should already have that ground. I shouldn't have to be forced to using that ground. Second, also it increases your the infinite prep time, because it means you're able to fully engage. You know which counter plans I can read, and you know that I can't read certain terms, which means that you don't have to do any prep for them. Look at your AF. You have probably 2 minutes of theory preamps. That means you know that your AF isn't topical. Now, on the ground standard, you say that solvency advocate solves, but there's no warrant for this whatsoever. Don't allow me to send on the next week. Second, even if there are other counter plans, definitely outweighed by there's virtually no literature solvency advocates for hyper-specific as counter plans. You also didn't extend your solvency advocate, which means you don't get access to it now. Extend ground is sufficient for everything else, as all the standards are internal links to ground, predictability, reciprocity, strat, and time key. Also clashes an internal link as you, because I'm not able to fully, you're not able to engage if you don't have the ground to do it. You've also conceded ground as an independent voter, separate from fairness. Now, lastly, extend fairness and drop the debate because the rights I need to session rights of flow just want to seek legal not portrait violation. So, definitely 6 minutes should be enough to pull the trigger on a, I don't know what else to say. So I'll stop.
Okay, what time did I have? 1:42, right? Yeah, 1:43.
Yeah.
Right now.
So what was your argument against the first advocacy skills standard? You said RVI takes this out because of burden to be topical or something?
Oh, yeah. You say there's a burden of rejoinder, but you have a burden to be topical. Truth testing says we need to determine the truth or falsity of the resolution, and that is irrelevant. Like,
you conceded RVIs in the C. How is this like at all relevant?
No, so when you asked that, I said I did not answer them directly. I feel like truth testing is a pretty direct indict of an RVI, which you conceded. You did not extend your RVI warrants in the 1AR, so you do not get access to RVIs. It's unfortunate, but that's what happened.
Where's my... Case for like 3 seconds, then you don't really have to go to case. Like by your flow, it doesn't really matter. What? Sorry?
Is the case stingy?
But case will be very brief.
This whether truth testing versus takes out RVI is not relevant. He doesn't extend case offense. Massey 15 is empirical solvency of the plan, which means you vote out from substantive by back TT. The counter-interpretation solves the entirety of their offense. U.S. Attorney's Office 13 proves the claim is in the literature and is topical because a ban could include stopping people convicted of intimate partner domestic violence. That is specifically my affirmative within the context of U.S. Attorney's Office calling it a ban, which solves the entirety of their offense and proves that there is no unique harm to fairness because it is necessarily defined as a ban, so they don't have true access to offense. The framing issue is you should evaluate the standards level debates as strength of link controls the size of the impact, not as absolutes. Obviously, fairness and education are both relevant because we have both made reasons why. And sometimes a little bit of fairness does not have a massive links to education, which means if I win substantial defense to his fairness claims, the blatant concessions of all the advocacy skills arguments are reasons you should still vote affirmative. He has conceded the A point of advocacy skills, which is the most important thing. Forcing me to have, allowing me to have specific plans is key to burden of rejoinder because if I have to defend whole breath, the neck can read the exact same dissets every single round, so they never have to respond to the specificities of the affirmative or defend their advocacies against objections. They never have to do prep or in-depth research about anything on the topic because they read the same arguments every topic. Specifically, key on Jan Feb produces terribly stale debates. There are like 5 affs under my interpretation, and there's 1 under his interpretation. I don't underlimit the resolution. I don't underlimit the resolution at all, but at least I allow some more responsibility as opposed to reading literally the same arguments every round. That's key to advocacy skills, which is conceded. So if I win minimal defense to fairness, that is sufficient. But I'll also win turns to fairness. The proof it's more relevant. Arguments under the clash standard were not were linked both to advocacy skills and fairness. All of these arguments are relevant. The argument about Dixon, said that 25 years old, proves the aff has no ability to read recent evidence or have offense from 25 years ago, since Dixon is the only author advocating national handgun ban from 1993. So the only way to have ground for the affirmative is to defend specific people. That is more relevant because the neg always has generics anyway that they can make apply with time skew or other kinds of arguments, but allowing the aff to have specific recent evidence is key to access the topic clerk. She has also conceded the argument that I've mixed the aff with sitting duck. If the neg knows exactly what the affirmative is, which is comparatively worse because the neg already has the benefits of disclosure and other things to know exactly what the aff reads. So the aff needs some flexibility in determining what the aff they read. He has conceded these weighing arguments from the 1AR and has done no weighing in the last speech about why his limits offense is more significant. So even on the fairness debate, you would vote aff. But the framing argument and the most important part of the debate is the extension of the picks and dissats argument that I read under limit standard because limits and ground are the only offense he has. He has conceded that under his interpretation, the neg can pick out of literally any group of people, which not only solves offense about why the aff can pick a group like rapists or dog owners, because the neg can pick out of anyone else but those people, which means the ability to predict what the other side would say is not unique. But he has conceded weighing arguments that at least the aff has a solvency or his dissats zone and the neg is reactive, so they can make generics or NCs or Ks reply, whereas the aff cannot restart the round in the 1AR, which is more significant. He says picks are illegitimate and bad to his read theory, which is not true because his interpret would justify and allow reading picks. My interpret would prevent it, so it's comparatively better. He says that reading whole res with advantage solves. I've already answered this. It would still allow the aff to pick out of the neg to pick out of things. It would not respond to the burden of rejoinder arguments, which means even if it went this truth testing or fairness arguments, he has to win the aff as a bad norm for debate. I am one that is more fair and is more educational, which are reasons to vote affirmative.
Good round.